Good morning. It is Monday and it's time for a high five. This week I'm going to be talking about what's happening on the Jewish calendar. You see right here when it's pink, that means it's a holiday or a holy day coming up or a feast, something like that. And what this is a feast of lots. It's Purim. Purim actually is a word that means lots. And it's the book of Esther, the whole book of Esther. Now this is the scroll. This is a scroll of Esther, and it is read. See the scroll like this. It's got Hebrew on one side and English on another. And this is read. The whole book of Esther is read on Purim, and it is a joyous time because it remembers the goodness of God. Now, the time frame, well, let me talk to you about the first verse of the book of Esther. And it came to pass in the days of. Now, in Hebrew, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to say this in Hebrew, but VYAHIBEMEYI, it came to pass in the days of. It occurs 6 times in the Bible. It always marks a time of trouble ending in a blessing. And in Genesis 14:1, when Lot was taken, and I remember when Abraham had to go and rescue Lot, and he took the spoils of all the kings, and he made a tithe to Melchizedek. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, it happens. Remember when Naomi and her family, her husband and her sons, when it was a famine and they went into another land, and the sons and the husband died, but it ended up in a blessing. Isaiah 7:1, Jeremiah 1:3, Esther 1:1, and 2 Samuel 21:1. They all start in a time of trouble, but they end in a blessing. And the one thing about Purim is it ends in a blessing. I would like the history to read, and it happened in the time of 2021, in the days of, that would be wonderful if we would have that written in history. So the time frame, 2000 BC, was when Jewish history begins with Abraham. 1,000 years later, the reign of David, Jonathan, Solomon. 722 BC, that's in the northern kingdom, ceased to exist. They ended up being called the 10 lost tribes. 586 BC, Jerusalem was invaded, the temple was destroyed, and the Jewish captives taken to Babylon. And the events of the book of Esther take place in Persia, which is now Iran, which is again in the news approximately 80 years later during the period of the events of Ezra and Nehemiah. Now, one interesting thing is, even if this is on the calendar for this week, and it is a two-day festival, the prophets, many prophets have been speaking about the book of Esther since last year. So I really expect, I'm really keeping my eyes open on every detail about Purim and the book of Esther this year, because I think something is going to happen. And I want to read to you 10 unique things about the book of Esther. The name of God is not mentioned one time in the entire book. God's name, however, is in acrostic and in 5 different phrases, and that is the hidden name of God. Even when you don't see him, he's working. Even when you don't feel him, he's working. One of 2 books of the 66 books that's named after a woman. The other one is Ruth. There's no prophecy, there's no promise, there's no distinct message from God in the entire Bible. There's no mention of heaven or hell. There's no prophetic word about the Messiah. There's no reference to worship or faith. It contains the longest verse in the entire Bible, and that is Esther 8:9. When the 10 sons of Haman are mentioned, 3 of the names have a smaller font in the Hebrew letter and of the Hebrew letter. The entire book revolves around feasts and much wine. Number 10, God has still works ordained, appointed time of events in Purim, even if it's not a specific feast day. Now, there was a time in 1946 when they were, after the Holocaust, when Hitler's 10 men were hung, and very much resembled what happened with Haman's 10 sons. And during the time of the Bush administration, this happened again. So history merely repeats itself. Remember that. What has been will be, and we can always find clues of what is happening with God in the Bible by looking at history. Amen? God bless you. Bye-bye.